Hi everybody, and welcome to What's My House Worth? Watch this show and in 30 minutes you just might know what your house is worth. My name is Rob Ticktin. I own Encompass Residential. It's a real estate brokerage company specifically designed for longtime homeowners. I also own Ticktin Development, which is a real estate development company right here in Needham.
And I am Ryan McDonnell. I am an owner and co-founder of Hawthorne Real Estate. We own a brokerage called Hawthorne Properties, and we also do development work under Hawthorne Builders right here in Needham as well.
All right, so with that in mind, we're going to start off by looking at all the sales data for the month of May right here in Needham, try to get an idea on the real estate market right here in town. And the first thing that jumps out, Ryan, as I look at the Needham May sales data is the number of houses that sold in the month of May, 30 houses. Thoughts?
It's relatively constant from April, but I think, to be honest, it's a little bit less than what we were expecting. Last year, we had 37 homes sold in May. April of this year, we were at 28, so it's not a big change from this current year, but still, it seems like it's slowed down a little bit.
It is a good sign, though, that it has been a steady climb over the last 3 months. Over the last 3 months, the number of homes sold has gone up. The one thing that I found to be interesting is over that same time period, over the last 3 months, the average sales price has gone down, which would probably explain the big number for sales price per square foot.
Yep, definitely, because that has gone up from where we've been seeing it around $300 a foot. Now we're up to $328 in the month of May, which was definitely a shot up.
Right, and there's always a relationship between the size of a house and the dollars per square foot. Typically speaking, the smaller the house, the higher the number in terms of dollars per square foot, because if it's smaller, if it costs less, you have more people who are in the market for it, which would drive up the price, as opposed to a really expensive or a really big house. There's only so many buyers for that, and so as a result, the dollars per square foot dips down a little bit. But 328 is a really healthy number, especially when considering, and we'll look over this in a little bit, that the list price per square foot is usually about that same number.
Yeah, it's right around 330. As you mentioned, we'll see that in an upcoming slide. One thing that we are still seeing common, constant, month over month is that magic sales price or sales price as a percentage of list. And that's at 97%, and it's been at 97%, and it will probably continue to be at 97%, and that just shows you how important your list price is.
And the one other thing I want to comment on is the 96 average days on market, 96 days. So often we see instances where a seller has their home on the market, and it's been 30 days, it's been 45 days, they start to get antsy, they start to get skittish, why is my home not selling? Sometimes 3 months is the average in Needham. There is a buyer for everybody's house, but that doesn't necessarily mean that buyer is looking as soon as you put your house on the market. So it takes a little patience sometimes.
Right.
As long as you're pricing it well and working with your real estate agent, your real estate broker, and reducing it as necessary, your house will eventually sell.
Yeah, timing is everything.
Timing and pricing.
Right. Isn't everything is everything eventually? But timing is very important. As you mentioned, when you put your house on the market, that may not be the weekend that your eventual buyer is out looking. So you focus on the price and let the market play it out as it will.
Okay, so let's dive a little bit deeper into the houses that have sold over the course of the month. And we will start with the big seller, or the house that sold for the most amount in Needham for the previous month, or in the month of May. This one is 33 Bird Drive. What are your thoughts on that one?
Bird Drive is a nice part of town. It's off of South Street. It's sort of in that area where the lots are bigger. It's the single residence A. It's on almost a 2-acre lot. It's a 5,200, almost 5,300 square foot house. Very, very, very nice. Nicely finished on the inside. Built in '96. It's sold for asking. So what did that tell you?
That tells you it was priced well.
I would say so.
I would say so too. When I looked at the listing sheet for this house too, one thing that jumped out at me in the description was the fact that it was noted as being near Wellesley. So when I see that for a house that's right off of South Street, my first instinct is that it's probably a broker who's not from Needham, and sure enough, it was a Charlestown broker that listed the house.
What's so great about Wellesley?
I don't know, especially when it's actually not near Wellesley. Right. But that jumped out at me. The other thing that really jumped out at me about this house is I feel like in previous months, the big seller has been a bigger number than this. So I took it upon myself to do a little digging as we go into a trivia question for Ryan.
This can't be good for me.
And my question is, how many houses currently are on the market in Needham that are listed at a price higher than what this house sold for?
Well,
I can repeat it if you want.
I think I can think of a couple. I know there's one on Beard. I know there's a couple on South, I believe. I'm going to say that it's going to be under 10.
It's actually significantly more than that.
Really?
It is. It's 25. I was shocked as well.
Are you including Wellesley?
No, just houses that are near Wellesley.
Oh.
So it's 25. All right, so don't worry. You couldn't bat 1,000 forever.
No.
You were perfect up to that point for this show, which means you were 0 for 0. But one thing I did notice is, so you have these 25 houses, but in the past 12 months, you've had 13 houses that have sold for more than this house. So you're talking about a turn of basically 0.5. If you have 25 houses sold at that rate and only 13 have sold in the previous year, yeah,
I'm doing math. It's difficult for me to keep
I am too, but I'm not using my hand. So the lesson here is that if you have a house that's over 1.5 million, there's a 50-50 chance you're going to have that on the market for over a year, which is a little frightening for somebody who's building a house for this price.
No, true, but that's something that needs to be factored going into the process. Is like you touched on it earlier, when you're looking at the average sale prices coming down, that means that prices that are priced lower are the ones that are moving.
Yep.
That just rolls up to the point you just made, and that if you're going to be positioning a house on the market that's over 1.5, you know that the segment of the population that can afford that house is smaller.
Right.
So it just stands to reason that it's going to take a little bit longer. Sales cycle will be longer because there's just fewer buyers out there.
Right, and if we're putting on our builder's hats, then that tells me that if you're going to build a house in that price point, you better bake in a pretty big number for your carrying costs.
Saddle up.
Yeah, because you could be paying a lot of money on a monthly basis just to carry it.
Right.
So any other thoughts on 33 Burr before we move on?
Well, one thing that's nice about that area of South Street, and one of the things that you encounter down the road, is that you get out of the private or the public sewer area. So this house on Burr is not on a septic system, which is, there's nothing wrong with being on a septic system if that's what your lot provides, but it's just always nice to be able to have that amenity that some people take for granted.
And maybe we can ask our next guest about the difference between being on public or being on a...
I see him now taking notes over there.
That's right. All right, so that does it for our big seller. Next up is the not so big seller, the nice way we like to say, for the house that sold for the least amount in Needham for the previous month. And for this month's not so big seller, it was 49 Oak Crest Road. Ryan, you familiar with this location? Right off High Rock, I believe, right?
It's near High Rock. It's on a private way.
Oh, it is a private way.
It is,
okay.
and it's an unpaved private way, which this house was sold to a developer. So the house is going to be torn down under the current plan and a new home built on the site. It's just under 9,000 square feet. As far as the lot size, it was on the market for about a month. But it's, from a developer's perspective, having developed a house on private ways, and one a few years ago that was actually on an unpaved private way, like we talked about your buyer market, and as a developer, you need to be thinking about how you're positioning the house, et cetera, and who you're positioning it to. So that's one thing that I'm sure that builder factored in, is that he's got an issue now with an unpaved road, and will that be unattractive to certain buyers? Right,
and then speaking of the building perspective of this house, the fact that it's under 10,000 square feet, but not by much, correct me if I'm wrong, it's better to have a house that's slightly under 10,000 square feet than slightly over 10,000 square feet. Some people aren't aware of that. Why is that?
It has to do with setbacks. So a number of years ago, Needham changed its zoning laws on its minimum square footage for lot sizes. And all the homes that were on lots that were 10,000 square feet or larger, the side setbacks in particular changed from a minimum of 10 feet to a minimum of 12.5 feet. And what that means is that your house, including all overhangs, gutters, eaves, et cetera, cannot encroach within 12.5 feet of your neighbor's house on either side. And so if you're on a lot that's almost 10,000 square feet, you sort of have the best of both worlds, because you're grandfathered into the old 10-foot setback. So if you're a developer or even a homeowner who's looking to maximize what they can do on their lot, you now have you just picked up 2.5 extra feet on either side that you wouldn't have had if your lot was 10,001 square foot.
And another reason that a builder might have been attracted to that house was the fact that there was no basement, just a small crawl space.
Yeah, easier to demo and less to get rid of.
Exactly. And homeowners typically like to have that basement, especially up here in New England. So that's the not so big seller. Are we good with that before we move on?
I think so. I mean, and let's be honest, $350,000 for a buildable lot is a pretty good deal. And it's a great neighborhood. I mean,
yeah, sounds about right.
It's nice.
Okay, so that's our not so big seller. Next up is the featured sale. That's something we like to look at each month. That for whatever reason we see a listing that kind of jumps off the page. And so this previous month's featured sale was 102 Fair Oaks Park, which is awfully close to also being the big seller. But why is it the featured sale?
Well, I mean, anytime you see a property trade on Fair Oaks Park, it sort of catches your eye just because of Fair Oaks Park and what that name sort of brings. It's sort of the epitome of Needham. It's one of Needham's most recognizable and nicest streets that we have. In fact, it was included just recently, a month or so ago, in the Boston Globe's
That's right.
20 top streets in, was it in the greater Boston area? Is that there?
I believe it was the greater
But
Boston
you know,
area, yes.
so it was right there, and it is sort of the, you know, the signature street in Needham. There's only 46 houses on the street. They don't trade very often, and when they do, your sales price is generally over $1 million. And this one, big lot, 17,000 square feet. It's a 5-bedroom, and it went for 1.425, and it sold in 6 days, which just goes to show that when you put a for sale sign up on Fair Oaks Park, you're going to get interest. You price it right, you're going to sell.
Did you know there were 46 houses on Fair Oaks, or did you just?
Well, I went by and counted them.
That's excellent work.
Yeah.
Good due diligence.
I could have looked it up, but I figured counting them might be easier.
What surprised me, though, is you see a house that goes so quickly, 6 days, but yet it still went $60,000 less than what it was listed for, which I thought to be a little surprising. Perhaps maybe the offer was attractive in other ways, or
you might have had something come up during the inspection that the seller, you know, may not have known about, and the buyer didn't know about it. They may have had an original price. Something came up, and the seller determined that they're going to have to deal with that whether this buyer buys it or not, and they just agreed to move forward at a reduction in price.
right. And of course, the other ways you can make your attractive more offers to do things like waiving financing, waiving inspection, or paying cash, things like that, which certainly have a value. I don't know if it equates to $60,000, but it might, depending on the situation. Also, did you notice the assessed value of this house?
No.
Okay, the assessed value for this house. Sorry, these layups aren't working.
No, that's a softball too, and I just missed it.
The assessed value for this house, $940,000. So that's a pretty big gap between the assessed value and the actual value of the house, almost $500,000.
Should we get Chip Davis on the phone?
No, he's probably on to us already. But you know, you talk about the in-town location. I mean, and Fair Oaks obviously is a really desirable street, but going back to that, there's a lot of desirable streets, and as a result, you have a lot of people who are wanting to move that area. I would say more so in years past. I think a lot of those people are empty nesters, people who want to be closer to town. But you know, generation to generation, it just seems to be a real popular place to be. Proximity to the train, to the restaurants, to the shops, and you can see it in the amount of inventory on May Street, on Fair Oaks, on Great Plain. It seems to be popping up and up.
Yeah.
Are we good with the featured sale before we go on to the market snapshot? We good?
I believe we are.
All right, we are. So our last slide before we go over every house that's sold in Needham in the month of May per MLS is the market snapshot, which takes a peek at what lies ahead for next month in Needham. And the market snapshot this month shows that we still have a pretty healthy inventory, 122 active single-family listings.
Yep, I mean, we had 134 last month. We have 98 homes that went under agreement during the month of May versus 106 last month. I got to be honest, I was expecting it to be a little bit higher.
Right, and they didn't go under agreement in the month of May, just for clarification. They are currently under agreement.
Right, as of June 5th. So a lot of that has to do with how long the closing cycle is, maybe. Some of these houses were captured in May and are also in June. But,
yes.
But still, I mean, we do have plenty of inventory on the market right now. It is being absorbed, but I would say that all of the things that we talked about last month in terms of interest rates being low, demand being high, all those things are still true.
Right.
We're just seeing a progression.
And the average listing price is up, which isn't surprising considering the houses that sold over the previous month were predominantly lower priced houses.
Right.
The average days on market, 116. The driver, or the big days on market house or current active listing, is 28 Mar, 735 days on market. However, it's priced at $2 million now,
Right.
which is down from $2,250,000. So they just had a $250,000 price reduction. So
Right.
I don't know if you're looking for a house, but you can't spend more than $2 million. If you are, 28 Mar might be the house for you.
That's an option, and you have to have some patience as that seller. And as we talked about, your sales cycle is longer when your house is priced the way it is. And if you look even further at some of the other big numbers as far as days on markets, the ones that are over 400 days, there's a couple over 500 days. 170 Nahoyden is up over 600 days. And these are all the higher price tagged homes.
Have you ever had a listing for 735 days?
Yeah, but I've been living in it, so it's different.
Right. But another listing? I mean, that has to create interesting
sense
relationship.
of angst. Oh, you'll get to know your client pretty well during 700 days.
Right. I mean, I guess it shows patience on behalf of the seller.
Yeah.
But that's not the case in this listing because this has been listed by 2 separate agents.
Right.
Okay, so that does it for our market snapshot. That also does it for our first segment of the show. So before we go to the second segment of the show, what we're going to do is show you every house that sold in the month of May in Needham per MLS, that's single family homes. And after you take a look at that, we will be joined by our guest. His name is Morgan Cohen of MKC and Associates out of Arlington. He's a Massachusetts licensed inspector. So we will have a lot of good questions for him, especially considering we were just talking about a lot of those things in the previous segment. So we'll be back in just a second.